Hello, welcome to Tuesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today we've got a puzzle from Ben Needham. Ben lives in Australia and he's a healthcare worker currently focused on some of the COVID-19 issues. So Ben, you deserve a lot of thanks for what you're doing, and we're delighted to show your puzzle. You featured on the channel a couple of weeks ago actually with your debut puzzle, which was brilliant, and our tester says this is brilliant as well. So it's great to see these new setters emerging with these wonderful ideas. And this is a Sudoku which has a fresh idea. I'll talk you through the rules in a second. Just to mention, in these days of self-isolation, we're continuing to try to get out 2 videos a day. So Mark will release one, probably on a classic Sudoku, late tonight UK time. This one should go out at the normal time of 8:30. Right, how does this puzzle work? Well, it's a combination. There are some sandwich Sudoku clues around the grid, so let me explain how they work. Basically, these clues tell you the sum of the cells sandwiched between the 1 and the 9 in the relevant row or column. So if we look at the 29 clue here, this tells us that wherever we put the 1, let's say we put the 1 there, wherever we put the 9, let's say we put the 9 there, these cells sandwiched between the 1 and the 9 would have to sum up to 29. So where there's a 0 clue, we know that the 1 and the 9 have nothing between them. They must be in adjacent squares. You don't know whether the 9 comes first or the 1 comes first, but you know there's no gap. Now, the thermometers are interesting. These don't work normally, as you can probably guess by the fact that this thermometer here is an astronomically large one. So as usual, they increase in terms of we can never decrease along a thermometer, but here the next number along a thermometer is a greater than or equals number. So it's possible, I mean obviously if this was a 1, this couldn't be a 1 as well because it's in the same 3x3 block. That could be a 2 though, and now this digit could absolutely be a 2 because it's not in the same row, column or box as this 2 here. In fact, that one could be a 2 as well. That one then couldn't be a 2. So it's an interesting variation, this. I'm looking forward to trying it. Do have a go yourselves. One of the best things about this channel is that you get to play the puzzles. So if you click on the link underneath the video, you'll be able to play along on whichever device takes your fancy. And with that, let's get cracking and see how we do this. So the first thing I would do in any sandwich Sudoku is I'd be looking for large clues in which I could basically eliminate cells from being 1s and 9s. So if we look at this column, there is no way any of those 3 squares can be a 1 or a 9. We can prove that by trying a 1 or a 9 in one of them. If we try a 1 here, what's the furthest away we can now put a 9 from this 1? Well, it's this square. That would lead to a sandwich of 4 cells. These 4 cells here in blue would have to add up to 29. Well, that's impossible because 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5, which is the maximum we can make that sandwich, only adds up to 26. So all of that means that there's no way there's a 1 or a 9 in any of those 3 squares. So I would mark that off. Now the other sandwich clues I'm not seeing we can do much with. So I think the thing we're meant to look at next is this huge thermometer going around the grid. So how should we do this? What we'll do is we'll try and work out what the minimum value is for every square along this thermometer. So obviously this one can be a 1, but the minimum this could be would be a 2. The minimum that could be would be a 2. That could be a 2. That one would then be a 3. That one would then be a 4. But that one could be a 4 as well, not a 6, a 4. That one could be a 4, but then that would have to be 5, that would have to be 6, that could be 6, that could be 6, that would be 7, 8. So we're starting to get, okay, we're starting to get to the higher end. So if this is a 1, the minimum this could be would be 8. So there's the interesting thing that I note about these values here is there is a maximum of 1 degree of freedom in any of these values. There's no way we could start with a 3 here because we would break this total. So actually we can now go along this thermometer and put in the only other option. If there's 1 degree of freedom, we cannot move more than 1 higher in any of these cells. So we get this pattern. So we get a string of pairs along this enormous thermometer. And can we pick out anything from this? No. Yes, but we can use the 29 clue. Very clever, very nice indeed. Look at this square. If you can't see why, do pause the video. This is a good learning opportunity because this is right at the crux of what Sandwich Sudoku is all about. Can this square down here ever be a 5? The answer is no. But why is it no? Well, we know that wherever we put, let's say we put the 1 here, just for the sake of argument, and we put the 9 as far away as we could, there. Well, actually, I'm going to put it there, just to illustrate the point here. Now we know that we've got 1 plus 9, that's 10, plus the sum of these 5 cells, which has to be 29, so that's 39 taken up in these 7 cells. So these 2 cells have got to sum up to 6. So you can see if I make this a 5, I have to make this a 1, and that repeats the 1 in the column. So there is no way that 5 can ever be outside the sandwich in a 29 column, because if it is, the column is broken. So this square cannot possibly be a 5, it must be a 6. Now the interesting thing about this being 6 is that now we go 29 plus 10, the 1 and the 9, plus 6 adds up to 45, which is what we know the column adds up to. If you add up the numbers from 1 to 9, you get 45. So now we know that actually the 1 must be here, the 9 must be here, this must add up to 29, and that makes the column add up to 45, which is the perfect number that we need. So this is a 6. And that's therefore a 7, which means this must be 7, 7. This can't be 7. This can't be 8 now. So we get a lovely run of 7s and 9s round the left-hand side of the grid. And now we can use the 0 clue, because this square, we know there's a 1 either in this square or this square. Well, it can't be in this square because there's already a 1 in the box. So that is a 1. So actually, if I'd been diligent about completing my green marks, you could see none of these squares now can be 1s and 9s. Now why does that matter? Well, it matters for this column, because we have a 9 here and a 7 here. We now know this square and this square are obviously not 1s and 9s. So the 1 must be in one of those. The 1 must be in one of those 2 squares. Now why must it be in one of those 2 squares? Well, if I put the 1 here, I've got a 4-cell sandwich, and the minimum numbers that you could use in a sandwich would be 2, 3, 4 and 5. That adds up to 14, so it can't possibly add up to 12. That's even before we consider there's a 7 in there already. So there's a 1 in one of these 2 squares. Now can the 1 be midway along a thermometer? Well, not in this case. I mean, actually the weird thing about this puzzle is that there are some thermometers that could be drawn that would have 2 1s on them, but here this would have to be a lower digit than a 1 because it's in the same box. So there's no way that's a 1. This is the 1. There's a 1 in one of those 2 squares, therefore a 9 in one of these 2 squares from these 9s. A 9 in one of these 2 squares. Again, this one can't be a 9 because if it is, what am I going to put in this square? I can't repeat the 9, so right, so I've now used the sandwich clue here. I've used the sandwich clue here. This is a 5, obviously. Now here's something interesting. Let's look at the central row of the grid. This square can't be a 1 or a 9. Now, the interesting thing about a 2 sandwich clue is that it must be either a 1 or a 9. It must be of this configuration. The 2 sits on its own between a 1 and a 9. You don't know which order the 1 and the 9 go in, but that's how it must look. So let's look at this now in the context of this row and ask where the 1s and 9s can go. This can't be a 1 or a 9, because if it is, this would be a 2 and this would be a 1 or a 9, which it can't be. So we can make that square green. Now by the same token, this square must also be green, because we can't place a 1 or a 9 either of those squares. And if this square was a 1 or a 9, this would be a 1 or a 9, and this square would have to be a 2. Now that's that's absolutely impossible. It's too far along this thermometer. And what's more, there's not even the possibility of putting a 1 into this square. There's no way this can be a 2. It just doesn't work. So this square also is not a 1 or a 9. Therefore these two squares are 1 or a 9. Beautiful. So this is the 2. And yeah, okay, and now we've used the 4 sandwich clues that Ben's given us. So I'm going to get rid of the highlighting now so that it doesn't confuse me. And we can carry on. Now there's a 9 here, so this is a 9, this is a 1. This is a 1, therefore, by normal Sudoku rules. There's a 1 in one of these 2 squares, a 1 in one of those 2 squares, and that's a nice trick we can do here. Look, this 1 eliminates the 1 from those 2 positions, which means we know that the 1 is in one of 4 cells in box 6. But the important thing to note here is that the 1 is definitely in column 7 or column 9. Now if we look down at box 9, the 1 is locked into column 7 or column 9. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, where does the 1 go in column 8? You can see it can't be in this box, it can't be in this box, so it must be in this box. And there's only one position that's valid in column 8, so it's that one. Now there's a similar trick we can do with 9s. Look, this 9, where can a 9 go in this box? Can't go in those 3 squares, can't go here, and it can't be the bottom number of a thermometer. So the 9 is locked into one of 4 positions in box 9. And importantly again, it's in column 8 or column 9, just as it is in box 3. So where does the 9 go in column 7? It must be in one of those 3 squares. So it must be here. Okay, so I think probably now we've got to look at this thermometer. Yeah, this thermometer is interesting because if we look at the first position, it can't be a 1 or a 2. And there's a 6 and a 7 in this box, and that's about the point. If this was a normal thermometer, we would be looking at about a 6 or a 7 here, especially if this had to be a 3. So this is definitely restricted. Let's look at the minimum values again. So if this can be 3, that one could be 3. Oh, good grief! That one could be 3. That one then couldn't be 3. That would have to be 4. That one could be 4. That one would have to be 5. That one can't be 5 because of the 5 in the row. So that has to be 6 or higher. This one could be 6. So that was less good than I was hoping for. But this cell is still restricted because this cell can't be an 8. Because if it's an 8, although I could make that one an 8, and even that one an 8, or no, actually I can't make that one an 8 because of there. So there's just no way this is an 8. So if its minimum value is 4 and it can't be 6 or 7, this could be 5. Which does make, it gives us a few things, look. So we've got 4, 5 pairs in row 7 and in box 8. So these squares are 2, 3 and 8 in some order. And well, this could be, yeah, this could be one higher. This could be one higher. This could be one higher, and this could be one higher, given the value, the options for this square. Does that give us any more pair? Yeah, it does give us a pair there, look. 3, 4 pair now in row 5. So these two squares have got to be 6 and 7. This square's got to be 5 or 6. I don't think this can be, it can't be 7 and it can't be 8 for the reasons we talked about earlier. So this square is 6 or 7. This square must be, could be 6. Oh no, 4, 5 pair there as well. That must be a 6, so that can't be a 6. That can be a 6 still. This must be a 7 or an 8. 6 in one of those two squares. This one can't be a 6 because this thermometer actually operates like a normal thermometer. Whatever we put in it, it can't have a frozen element. So if this is 6, it would have to go 7, 8, 9, and this square would clash. So the 6 is there. Four, 5 here. What am I meant to do now? 4. Well, this thermometer maybe is a bit restricted because this square can't be 8 or 9. So the minimum this could be would be 2, 3, 4, 5 is fine. What's the maximum value of this square? Can it be 5? 5? 6? No, it can't be 5. This can't be 5. That's a 3 or a 4, which is interesting. That gives us a 2, 3, 4 triple in this box. Let's just check this can be 4. 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, it can be. So you can see if we look at this column now, that 8 is locked down there, so this can't be 8. That does give us a 2, 3 pair here. And these squares have got to be, what's that going to be, 5, 7 and 8. Ooh, which gives us a 5, 7, 8 triple in column 6. Good grief. So this square must be a 4, that can't be a 5 anymore. Which means that square is a 5. Ah, now, this is interesting, because this 5 doesn't actually affect the value of that square. It could still be a 5, I think. In fact, maybe it has to be a 5. It does have to be a 5. It's the only place a 5 can go in the column. But this 4 might be better, yes, because there's no way these two squares can be 5 anymore. They're lower on the thermometer. So those are 4s. Therefore, that's a 3, 2, 2, 2. And we've done the long thermometer now. Look at this. We've got 3 2s, 3 4s, 3 7s and 3 9s on the same thermometer. That is quality. This 2 sees that square, so that's a 3. This is 2, 8. This can't be a 2 anymore. That gives us a 3, 4 pair there and there. 8, 5. 2 must be in one of those squares from these 2s. It can't be in this position for obvious reasons. So what should we do? Oh, well, this square can't be a 5 because 4, 3, that would make this square have to be 2 or less. So that's not going to work. In fact, this square is quite restricted. It can't be 1, 2 or 3. So that's a 7 or an 8. That gives us a 5 here. So this square now has to be 3, 4, 7 or 8. Well, it can't be 7 or 8. So this, and it can't be 3. So that's a 4. That's a 3. That's a 4, therefore. These two are 7 and 8, which we can resolve. That must be 8, 7 in that order. 4 and 7, these two have to be 5 and 6, therefore. And can we do better than that? I'm sure we can. There's a 5 down there. These squares are 2, 3 and 4. The 4 is forced into that square. This is a 2, 3 pair. If we look at this column now, we still need 2, 3. Yeah, we need 2, 3 and 4. There's a 4 here. So this is that a 2 or a 3? That's huge if so. Because look, there's a 1 already in this box. So not only do we know this is a 4, but now this can't possibly be a 2 because that would have to be a 1 and it can't be. So that must be 3, 2 like that, which resolves the 3 and the 2 at the top. Forces this to be a 2, that one to be a 1. Places a 1 over there. Oh, we're starting to get somewhere now. We need a 6 down here. So there's a 6 in one of those two squares. So this must be an 8. 3, 4, 6 into these squares. This one must be a 3, therefore, from this 4 and this 6. So that makes that a 4. Still doesn't resolve this square. That must be an 8, I think. That means that's a 7, that's an 8. 7 in one of those 3 squares. Might as well pencil mark it. There's a 6 up here as well. These squares have got to be 3, 5 and 8. Well, the 3 can't go higher up on a thermometer than a 4, so that's a 3. These two squares are 5 and 8. So 3 down here by basic Sudoku. And oh yeah, this square, look, can't be, now it can't be 1, 2, 3 or 4. So this, and it can't be 6. And it can't be 7 because that would put an 8 here, which would clash. So this square is a 5, I think. Which makes that a 5, that a 6, that a 9. 6 in one of these two squares now. It's a 6, 7 pair there. I should have spotted that. It's because I didn't do my pencil marks properly. So this square is an 8. That fixes that that's a 7. This could still be 6 or 7, I think. Maybe I'm missing a trick there, but it looks to me like that's true. That's a 4, that's a 3. That should be a 5. That fixes the 5 and the 8 up there, look. That must be an 8. That fixes the 8 and the 2, allows us to place a 9 over here. That allows us to do that. I think we're nearly there. This must be a 6 because it can't be a 7. That fixes the 6 and the 7. That fixes the 6 and the 7. That fixes the 7 there. And if I haven't made a mistake, we can place a 2 here. Yes. What a lovely puzzle. Beautiful. Beautiful. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let us know in the comments. It's so important because not just for Mark and me to hear your feedback, but also for the guys who construct the puzzles. They do tend to read all the comments. So do let them know what you think. And come back soon for another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.